Also, CNN legal analyst Laura Coates and national security and legal analyst Susan Hennessy. Thank you all for joining the panel. Laura, you first. This is possibly yet another undisclosed meeting with the Russian ambassador, and this attorney general has already had to recuse himself from the Russia probe. What do you, do people just really have that bad a memory? What do you make of this new reporting?
Well, the amnesia is suspicious at best. I mean, the idea that you can continuously forget about these very important meetings of people who, in some way or another, have impacted or have been alleged to have impacted an election that you were a part of is very interesting and curious. And it invites the scrutiny of the FBI. It invites further scrutiny and says, listen, it's not about necessarily your proactive positions or what you've done. It also includes your omissions. The omissions themselves are curious. If you consistently fail to provide information about things that have happened and you remember everything else, the omission invites further scrutiny. And again, we're in a larger investigation process now where the whole goal is figuring out what actually happened, what role did each person play, and was there a nefarious end or objective? And your omissions and your failure to recall certain things are not a matter of simple amnesia. It could be a matter of an intentional act to try to thwart the process, and that is the subject of the investigation itself.
Susan, former FBI Director James Comey set to publicly testify next week about President Trump pressuring him to end the Flynn probe. What should we expect?
All right, so I'm sure it will be compelling testimony. Jim Comey has actually sort of made his career around these moments of giving really dramatic testimony in front of Congress. Really, we're going to hear his side of the story for the first time, whether or not he perceived that the President of the United States was pressuring him to actually drop this investigation, or whether there's anything to the White House's representations that this was just sort of Trump in passing looking out for a friend. So I think that this really is going to be the moment in which it will be sort of deciding moment as to whether or not Congress goes forward with in looking into whether or not there are serious obstruction issues. If instead Comey says, look, I wasn't worried, or there was, there was some ambiguity here, that might take some of the wind out of the sails.
Dan, I have to ask you about these subpoenas because there were also 7 subpoenas issued by the House Intelligence Committee. 4 were on the Russia probe and 3 were issued to seek information on unmasking. But according to a senior House Intel aide, the unmasking subpoenas would have been sent separately by House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes without approval from Democrats. Why is Nunes involved at all if he supposedly recused himself?
That's an excellent question, and it's one, frankly, that Democrats have been quietly talking about. I talked to one last week who said, I'm not so sure that Devin Nunes really did recuse himself and really has separated himself from this investigation because he is still, it looks like he's still taking responsibility for the subpoena power, which in the House, the chairman can do without a vote. And so that is certainly seems to be the case. And remember, the whole reason why he got himself into so much hot water is because he had this sort of moment where he said he saw intelligence that he was worried about that it hurt somebody at the White House. So he went over to the White House to tell them about it. And then he came out to talk to the press. And it turned out that the information came to him from the White House to begin with. And it was complicated and odd and weird. And and he got in trouble. And now he's actually being investigated by the Ethics Committee. So that's a long way of saying, it's unclear. And the fact that these subpoenas went out and it is now known that he did them, even though he recused himself, whether that is going to put pressure on the Republican leadership to change the system.
It certainly seems shady, regardless of what it is. So, Laura, I have to ask you, a senior House Republican aide says Chairman Nunes never actually recused himself to begin with, saying that has a very specific legal definition. How do you react to that? What does that mean?
I'm frustrated, as I think most people are, that the idea that you would parse words on issues of such importance. Recusal is not intended for you to continue to dip your toe into the pool, hoping that nobody notices. It's intended to maintain and restore, oftentimes, the credibility of the objectivity of the committee itself. And so if you're intending to certainly hoodwink people and pull the wool over their eyes and suggest that I'm only going to just, kind of teeter around the issue, that doesn't really mean recusal. Let's parse some words here. It doesn't do much to restore the credibility or the faith people should have in an independent, objective investigation into what could have been the collusion between a foreign entity and a campaign. And so I'm frustrated by, like most people are, it also harkens back to the frustration people had with respect to Jeff Sessions, who said he recused himself with respect to the Russia investigation and then had particularly a part in the firing of FBI Director Comey. This sort of waffling between two terms and hoping that people decide not to look into the definition and hope to have the parsing of the words replace credibility and ethical standards is very dangerous, and it does not bode well.
Who is that trying to get in?
It's Dan. I just want to add one more thing. This is even more reason why the focus has rightly been, when it comes to congressional investigations, on the Senate, because the rules are different there, and frankly, just the nature of the relationship between the Republican chairman, Richard Burr, and the Democratic head, the ranking Democrat, Mark Warner, at least for the past month or so, they have been working very well together. And so that investigation seems to be, frankly, the more robust one and the one to watch, and the House, not so much.
Jim, I have to ask you something. Let's just say that there is no there. I know it's a hypothetical. There's nothing there when it comes to Russia collusion. All this is for naught. But how is this behavior okay? Because it seems like there's a lot of omissions, thwarting of investigations, stonewalling. What should we read, if anything, in this? Is the behavior that happens, even if there's no there, is that okay?
Well, listen, clearly Trump aides and Trump himself perhaps open themselves up to these hard questions because they haven't been forthcoming with all the information, whether you're talking about meetings like the ones we're seeing with Sessions or Flynn or others, and as well as the president's comments himself, denying, for instance, the conclusions of the intelligence agencies about Russian interference or doubting those conclusions. So it helps open up these questions. And the question then is, what is the political benefit of that? I mean, you can make an argument that the best strategy would be to be forthcoming fast and quick and fully so that you can get the investigations out of the way as quickly as possible so they could come to a conclusion about these open questions.
But Jim, if I can just jump in here and say, because let's just say that there was an omission. If an omission and lying about it, they're equally the same. It's not that, I forgot about it. Those carry the same consequences.
Well, lying about it, if it was in sworn testimony,
but lying by omission, isn't that the same thing?
Well, no, I mean, listen, you can argue that they're both withholding information, but from a legal perspective, if it was determined that someone or anyone involved withheld something they knew to be true in sworn testimony, that becomes a bigger deal, because then you're talking about perjury.
Well, I mean on the forms.
Oh, well, then there's a separate issue beyond sworn testimony on your SF-86, which is your security clearance form. CNN had some reporting last week about Sessions not being fully forthcoming on the form. There have been questions about Jared Kushner listing Russia meetings, etc. That's a different violation if it's determined that you withheld information there than perjury, say, in sworn testimony. But both of them, no question, are serious issues if they are corroborated.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. And we come back as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump battle it out on Twitter tonight. The White House now referring all questions about the Russia investigation to the president's personal lawyer. Will that help or hurt the administration? Ronald Reagan's son weighs in next.